Gary, it's July 2023. I hope you can read this little message which I've put and written as the long, long road to ESDI. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the enhanced small disk interface. And this is just a posting about my fastidious attempt to give, I guess, my eBay customers a better and good deal. In that, I'm not saying the end is totally near, but as time marches on, I am minimalising every possession that I own in this world. And one of the things that's going is my MFM hard disk collection, and there's a smaller collection of ESDI discs. Now, the ESDI discs have been on sale for over 2 years on eBay. And I've had one sale, and I suspect that's because these drives are not tested. Now, they're currently in a vault, so I can't show them to you, but they are very similar to the MFM hard disk drives. So I think at this point I shall do a little diagram. This is totally unscripted, by the way, so hopefully I won't make too many errors. In the late 70s / early 1980s, there was a hard disk standard called the Seagate interface, also known as the MFM or ST412506 interface. I think it's called 506 because Seagate released the first drive, which is a 506. So hard disk interfaces started off something like MFM or ST506. Then we had ESDI, Enhanced Small Disk Interface. Then we had, I would say, IDE. Then we had SATA. And now we've got effectively M.2 NVMe. So this is something like 1980. This may be like something 1980 to 1985. This might be something like 1990. This is up to today. Everyone's still using SATA, generally speaking, for spinning drives. So this is up to and including 2023, something like 2000 maybe. And this is, I'm guessing, let's say from 20. I think we've had them since about 2016, something like that. So anyway, I'm trying to focus on the ESDI, Enhanced Small Disk Interface. Now this interface used the same connectors as an MFM drive. So you have a hard drive, and you have a data connector and a control connector. Control and data connector. Let's go back to my swatch sheet because I can hardly remember what's going on here. I think that's a 34-pin control and a 20-pin data. So these are the ESD drives. I think you could get them as small as something like 80 megabytes. I'm not talking gigabytes. And I think the biggest one that I have for sale is something like 1,200 megabytes. So that's 1.2 gigabytes. And so I'd just like to chronicle my non-getting it working so far. So let's go to the next page, shall we? So the 3 or 4 mechanisms that I'm trying to get these drives to be read and formatted and then checked, and hence it will be then resold on eBay as checked working or checked not working. The first would be to connect my 1970s or late 1970s Kremenko computer using an S100 bus. And there's a card for Kremenko systems called the ESDC controller card, and that actually has an ESDI interface on it. And the idea is then you just connect the control and data cables to a drive, and then you'd be able to, so that's the ESD drive. What could be wrong with that? Well, what would be wrong with that is that I have several of these systems, but they're very flaky. And if I was to insert a new ESDI card into one of those systems and mess about with the DMA interrupts and the priority interrupt chain, the whole system might stop working, and it's on a knife edge. So much as I would like to do that, because I wouldn't need to do any extra buying of anything, I'm not going to do that. Okay, here is one of my Kremamco computers. This was bought in about 1979 and has been upgraded for the sort of first 5 years of its lifetime. And then in the last 2 or 3 years has had some much larger upgrades, in the sense that the MFM hard drives have been replaced by an emulator. So I don't need the MFM drives anymore. And I've also got a solid state emulator for floppy drives, which is here. It's also used by the Princess as a bed for most of its time. But if she wasn't there, I'd be able to take the top off from here, and you'll be able to see that there's a back plane which contains up to 21 cards that slot in vertically in this instance. And one of those cards could be the ESDI hard drive controller from Kremamco. But like I say, installing that would be a risky operation. The second possibility would be to use an IBM PC, an old IBM PC. So an IBM PC, but it has to be an AT PC. So to explain, when IBM came on the scene in 1980, they changed the bus that was then quite well established, which is what's called the S100 bus. And they decided they were going to have a new bus called the IBM PC bus, and it was 8 bits inside, and there was an ISA slot, Industry Standard Association, or ISA. They had an 8-bit slot. But then, when the PC AT came out with a faster processor, that slot was actually made longer, and there was a 16-bit slot. And this was a standard which anyone could make a card to, and many people did make cards. And I've got the prop because I didn't have until a week ago an ESDI card. So the idea would be to have a PC, an AT style PC, fit an ESDI card in there, and then in the same way connect the data and control wires. I've got lots of these cables from my MFM drives, so I've just used the same cables and connect it to an ESDI drive. So that's plan B. Now here is the card. So I've been looking for this card for at least 6 months, and then one showed up. So I bought the card, it has arrived, but I've actually got really nothing to plug it into. Well, I do have an emergency IBM PC XT286. So I actually do have a 16-bit PC, but it's in secure storage. It's all wrapped up. So I've got a PC XT286. But I don't want to get that out. That's a special PC that's being used for Dunfield disk imaging. So again, I've kind of got a solution, but I'm too chicken to use it really. So the other option was to buy another PC and then sell it at the end of the exercise. Again, to be clear, what we're trying to do is get rid of stuff, and although I'm on the process of getting rid of stuff, I'm buying stuff, so it's not totally ideal. So here we are. It's towards the end of July 2023, and on eBay I have found looks like fantastic condition 1980s style PC. I've looked up the model number. It's using a Cyrix, so I've bought a Cyrix. Cyrix was the hardware vendor that they made an IBM compatible. Sorry, they made I think a 386 or 486 compatible CPU. And this PC is not made by Cyrix, but it contains a Cyrix CPU. I looked up the specs, and I believe it's got an ISA 16 slot. So that is a possibility. We have not got anywhere yet, but when I get the PC, assuming the PC works, assume it's got an ISA 16 slot, I put this card in, and hopefully then I've got this control, this data. You can have up to 2 drives. This will be the data connections for each drive, and the control is shared. So assuming this card works, then that is a possibility. Possibility number 3 is using microchannel. So when IBM had a PC design launched in the early 80s, and it was really overtaken by competitors. At the time I was working for IBM, and basically what we decided was, well, if we would produce something which was superior, which everyone could pay a license for, we would get back the market for IBM PCs, or for personal computers, which we sort of stumbled into in the first instance, in fact, because we never thought the PC was going to come to anything. We'd stumble back into that PC marketplace, and we'd regain our leadership. So the PS2 was born, and the PS2 has something which is called microchannel. So we IBM changed the bus from the IBM ISA bus, as it was then known, to the microchannel bus, and it's physically a completely different bus. So obviously these cards don't fit in here. And what we also did for many of the desktop computers is we made a very clever design, and I have the prop here because I have a Model 70. It's a Model 70 I've owned for, is it 30 years, or it can't be 40 years? I mean, these came out in the early 90s now. The thing is, are you going to be able to see anything here? Can we zoom out a bit? Okay. Let me try and show you the bus. Okay, so here we have brand spanking new. It's a brand spanking old IBM PC PS2 model 121, model 70-121. And you'll see here we have got these microchannel slots, and the idea would be to use an adapter card to plug in here. Now, let me get another prop. So the PS2 was announced in 1987, and again, I've had this machine since new. So I think it was about 1990. I think I got it. It was one of the fastest PS2s I could get for the money. Now this is the desktop version, and the desktop version, if you have a look, has no cables inside the machine. I mean, it's extraordinary. No cables. And how did they do that? They did that because they had a number of proprietary interfaces. Now, at the time working for IBM, I thought, well, this is just great. But now, looking back on it, I realised the danger of proprietary, because proprietary is just a lock-in. So if you see here, you've got the actual guts of the machine. The hard drive slots in to here. Now, this is an ESDI hard drive, and you can see that it's got an edge connector like this. And it's a totally dedicated edge connector with a board of electronics, which only fits an IBM PS2. I think it only fits IBM computer devices. Again, look at the cables that would come off a regular drive, and all the drives I'm selling are regular drives with the control and data here. And you can see that they've kind of made some kind of combination of the two, but who knows what they did. And I certainly I'm not able to sort of make a converter cable, and no such converter cables exist to my knowledge. So the idea is, you can't test a regular ESDI drive in here. Why? Because IBM in their proprietary design made it so you could only plug in these special disks from IBM. So that's a Model 70 PS2, and it's totally locked down to IBM. But you could buy an ESDI controller which would fit in here. And believe it or not, the ESDI controller would fit in here has got a standard set of connector outputs. So if I could only find a microchannel controller and get this PC working, some very big butts here, then I'd have a working microchannel system with which I could test the ESD drives, reformat them, check them for errors, and maybe sell them. But that is a very, very long process, because this PC is not actually guaranteed to be working. Especially since I can't install an operating system because this is proprietary and seized. So the other option would be to find a Model 80. Now, so the other option would be, instead of using this microchannel device here, so the microchannel, I'd need to find a microchannel ESDI card, and that's got the standard connectors here, and that would connect my ESDI disc. That's kind of option 3. Or option 4 would be to buy a Tower 8580, that's what's called a PS2 Model 80. And that, depending on the model, came with this card. It came with the ESDI card. Where's the motherboard? Oh, there's the front of the PC. The motherboard's in the back there. So there'll be like a card sort of at the back of the machine, sort of sticking down. And that would have two cables off it. So some of the PS2s, not all of them, because some of them had MFM drives. That's the earliest type of drive, going back to our diagram. Some of them had the MFM drives. But some of the later PS2s, I believe, had ESDI hard drives. So the ones that were the bigger discs, so the smallest PS2 Model 80s had MFM drives, and I believe the larger Model 80s had ESDI hard drives. So option 4, if you like, would be to buy a PS2 Model 80. Now the trouble is, in terms of pricing, well obviously you can't buy Cramenco computers anymore, they would be incredibly expensive. Machines with an ISA 16 bus seem to be pretty rare. In fact, they're more expensive. So these PCs are like, say, 1990s PCs. And if you buy a PC which is from the 2000s with PCI slots only, it's about 50 or 60 pounds. But if you try and buy a PC that's from the 1990s, you're going to be spending at least £100, maybe £200. If you try to buy a PS2, because they're so much rarer, for one that actually works, you could be spending at least £500. So where are we? I'm still on my quest to sell these drives and make a meaningful sale, so that they will sell and reduce my hardware inventory. There's lots of different ways of doing it. I've got 4 different mechanisms here. I've actually bought a new PC, sorry, new to me PC, which I should be picking up in a week or so. And then the plan is to drive the hundreds of miles to pick up that PC, drive all the way back again, because they won't post it, see if the card fits, and we've got that. I've got backup plan number 2, which is that I have a PC in storage for even more hundreds of miles away, which has been in storage for, I think it's been about 25 years now. So I've got the storage PC option. That's 25 years in the mothballing. So option, most likely option 2, if this doesn't work, is to drive, I think it's almost 500 kilometers to go and get that PC, drive 500 kilometers to come back, see if that will fit the ESDI card in it, and then we're going to test the drives with that. If I ever get a microchannel system working, it'll just be nice to have. I've got the Model 70, but I think that something's blown on it, so I probably can cannibalize some of the components of the Model 70 into another machine or vice versa. But getting a microchannel machine working is difficult just because there are so few machines around. Okay, Dari, I shall leave you with a picture of this wonderful ESDI card, which I hope is going to do the business. Dated, oh, where we're dated? 1987. So it's a Western Digital card, and this is the kind of card that IBM themselves used in their PCs back in the day, around about 1987. Okay, Dari, thanks for listening, and I shall keep you informed as to the progress of the ESDI